Alright, hello everybody, this is Mystic Magic, and today I'm going to be doing a standard deck review. This is the champion deck that I won the store championship with at my local game store, and that's why I'm playing on this nice champion Domri mat here. This is a Golgari Beatdown deck, somewhat Golgari mid-range, but a bit faster than your normal mid-range deck. I've organized it just in terms of mana curve, so I have lands over there, then 1 drops, 2 drops, 3 drops, 4 drops, etc. And then right here I have my sideboard. And let's just get right into it. So this deck is supposed to be a pretty fast deck that aims to just kill them out with creatures, but also has a few tricks up its sleeves as well. So for the lands, I just have 4 woodland cemeteries, 4 overgrown tombs, some forests. I believe I have 8 forests and 7 swamps. This deck has 23 lands in it. And then next for the 1 drops, I have some Pelt Collectors, 4 of them. Pelt Collector is a 1/1 for 1 elf warrior. Whenever another creature you control enters the battlefield or dies, if that creature's power is greater than Pelt Collector, put a +1/+1 counter on it. And as long as it has 3 or more +1/+1 counters on it, it has trample. So this is a really good card in the deck to play on turn 1, because you eventually just start playing bigger and bigger creatures, which just makes the Pelt Collector bigger as well. So you are getting pretty good value whenever you play a big creature. Or, in fact, when a big creature you control dies, this will also get a counter. And I also have 4 Llanowar Elves, just for that mana acceleration, so I can get my threats out faster. And for the 2-drop slot, I will do the creatures before the spells. For the 2-drop slot, I have 4 Thorn Lieutenants. These are a 2/3 for 2. Whenever it becomes a target of a spell or ability an opponent controls, create a 1/1 green elf warrior token. So basically, if someone tries to remove the Thorn Lieutenant, you will get a little body just as a compensation. It just helps you have another blocker or get in for some ping damage. And it also has an activated ability for 5 green mana. It gets +4/+4 until end of turn. This is nice if you just have this on the battlefield and you have some empty mana that you can't really do anything with. You just pump this guy up and swing in, bash your opponent's face in for a bunch of damage. Just help put them over the edge and get you to victory. And next I have Merfolk Branchwalkers, also 4 of those. Merfolk Branchwalker is a 2/1 for 2, and when it enters the battlefield, it explores. So you look at the top card of your library, put that card into your hand if it's a land, otherwise put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. You can put that card back or put it into the graveyard. So this is just a great card advantage engine, because you can get a land off the top of your deck so you can draw what you need, and if there's something there that you don't like, you can just pitch it straight into the graveyard and this thing will get a counter. Next I have 4 of Assassin's Trophy. It's an instant for 1 green and 1 black. Destroy target permanent an opponent controls. Its controller may search their library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle their library. This is the removal in the deck. It just helps keep threats off of your opponent's board. Planeswalkers, lands, enchantments, creatures, whatever you want. You can destroy any permanent that you want. And it does get them a land, but when you will be playing this is usually late game anyway, so that should be okay. And then for the last 2-drop slot, this is, I guess, a 2 and a 6-drop. I have 3 Find and Finalities. Now, the Find part of the card is a 2-mana sorcery, the hybrid mana there. It's return up to 2 target creature cards from your graveyard to your hand. The find part is very good because if a board wipe goes off, if your opponent's playing control, you can use this to just dig true creatures out of your graveyard, just get back 2 big threats, and just keep putting the pressure on your opponent until they can't really do anything about it. And the finality part is also useful, but not as useful. It is 6 mana to put 2 +1/+1 counters on a creature you control, then all creatures get -4/-4 until end of turn. So what I usually like doing with this is making one of my threats even bigger and then wiping out the entire board, leaving me with only that big creature, just being able to swing in for a bunch of damage. Alright, on to the 3-drop slot. In the 3 drops, I have 3 Jade Light Rangers. These are similar to Merfolk Branchwalkers in the fact that they're 2/1s, but they cost 3 and they explore twice. Now the reason I have these as only a 3 of and not a 4 of is because sometimes you can whiff with these and only get lands off the top, so they just come in as a 2/1 for 3. And for this deck, that's kind of bad. But I do have 3 of them just for the fact that they're, again, good card advantage. And they can just help you get the cards you need to advance yourself in the game. And then I have a 2 of Spawn of Mayhem. Now I know this card is 4 mana, but it is still in the 3-drop slot because of its spectacle cost there. You may cast this spell for 3 rather than 4 if an opponent has lost life this turn. Is a Flying Trample 4/4. At the beginning of your upkeep, Spawn of Mayhem deals 1 damage to each player. Then, if you have 10 or less life, put a +1/+1 counter on Spawn of Mayhem. Another reason why I have a 2/0 of this is just because it deals damage to you at your upkeep, and that could sometimes kill you, but not necessarily. This is just still a good thing to get down on turn 3. And on to the 4 drops. I have a 2 of Poison Tip Archer. This is a 2/3 reach death touch for 4 creature elf archer. And the good part about this is whenever another creature dies, just any other creature, each opponent loses 1 life. Now the reason this is only a 2 of is because it is only a 2/3 for 4. But the reason I do have it in here is because of that bottom ability there. Now one of the synergies I like to abuse a lot in the deck is the synergy of Find Finality plus Poison Tip Archer. Now if you use the Finality half of the card to put 2 +1/+1 counters on Poison Tip Archer, then you kill all other creatures. Poison Tip Archer will survive. A whole bunch of other creatures will die, and you can end up shooting them with the Poison Tip Archer for a whole bunch of damage. Besides, it leaves you with a 4/5 threat on the battlefield. That's just another thing that they have to deal with. And for the all-star of the deck, the card that inspired the whole thing, 4 of Nullhide Ferox. This card is just a card that I saw and I instantly knew that it had a whole bunch of potential. This is a 4 mana 6/6 that already is very, very good. Hexproof, but it says you can't cast non-creature spells. Now this does put a little bit of a wrench in your plans sometimes if you want to do something, but for 2 mana, Nullhide Ferox loses all abilities until end of turn. Any player may activate that ability. So basically what this pans down to is it's a 6/6 for 4, and if your opponents want to target it, they have to pay 2 more for any of their spells that they cast to target this thing. And now, most of the non-creature spells you will be casting, such as Find or Assassin's Trophy, are only 2 mana, so you'll just have to pay 4 for those, which is okay, I guess. But yeah, this is just a monster. You just drop this on turn 3 with Lana or Elves, a 6/6 hexproof. You can just see the look on your opponent's face. This card is amazing. And to rub it in, its bottom ability there, if a spell or ability an opponent controls causes you to discard Nullhide Ferox, put it onto the battlefield instead of putting it into your graveyard. So if your opponent plays something that says target opponent discards a card, and you discard this Nullhide Ferox, it goes onto your battlefield for free. And if your opponent wants to try and rip it out of your hand with, say, some hand removal card like, what's that called? Thought Erasure? Yeah? They can't target this thing because it'll just go straight onto the battlefield. And now for the 5-drop slot, there are only 3 of those. I run 3 of Doom Whisper. This is a 6/6 flying trample for 5. That is already very good on its own, just a whole bunch of value for the mana cost of this card. And you can pay 2 life to surveil 2. So you look at the top 2 cards, either keep them there or put them into the graveyard. What I usually do with this is if it would die, I immediately just pay the 2 life to surveil 2. And if you're running out of options and just want to make sure you draw what you need, you can just pay your life and surveil. No additional mana costs. Not to mention that it is a 6/6 body. There are only 3 of these, however, just because it is a high mana cost relatively for the deck, and it is easily removable just because it doesn't have really any evasive abilities. And then, top out the curve, I have a 1 of Carnage Tyrant. I'm sure all of you know what Carnage Tyrant does. It is the bane of control decks. A 6 mana 7/6 that can't be countered with trample and hexproof. If you play this card against a control player, you can just watch their faces drop. It's just, as the flavor text of the card says, a large implacable death lizard. And onto the sideboard, I have here another Carnage Tyrant, just in case I am playing against a control deck and need the extra help. I have 4 Divests, because in Standard there are some certain creatures that can beat this deck that aren't too favorable to play against, and if your opponent has one of those, you sideboard this in and make sure that they are never able to play it. I have an extra Fine and Finality again for control decks if I need to fish more things out of my graveyard. I have some Crawl Harpooners. Crawl Harpooner is a 2 mana 3/2 with reach. Undergrowth. When it enters the battlefield, choose up to 1 target creature with flying that you don't control. Crawl Harpooner gets +X/+O until end of turn, where X is the number of creature cards in your graveyard. Then you may have Crawl Harpooner fight this creature. This is good just against decks with a lot of flyers. This is a good card against Lyra Dawnbringer, because it's essentially 2 mana destroy target flying creature, but it also gets you a body out, and it will trigger Pelt Collector when it hits the battlefield. Not to mention you can reuse this card with Find to dig it out of your graveyard, and if all else fails, you can always just have a 3/2 body down on the battlefield. I have 3 Ritual of Soots. Destroy all creatures with converted mana cost 3 or less. That does hit a lot of creatures in this deck, but one of the things that this deck seems to struggle with a lot is tokens. So this is a card to just help me get rid of tokens faster and just keep my threats on the battlefield. And then I have 2 of Duress, just for some control players in case there's some non-creature, non-land card in their hand that I do not specifically want them to have. And that should be it for the deck. I will move everything aside here real quick to let you guys take a look at the champion mat, because like I said, this deck won the championship at my local game store. It's got a Domri raid on it there. This is champion down at the bottom. It's pretty nice. And that should be the end of the video. Thank you all so much for watching. And again, if you like the video, please just make sure to like, subscribe, share it with anyone else you think might enjoy my content. Thank you so much, and I will see you next time.